Hello, 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 and welcome back to the show, y'all. Happy Monday. Yeah. We are back. Hopefully you had a great weekend. Hopefully you had a great Monday and you're here to hang out with us. You know, diabetes is one of those diseases that it seems that we're always talking about. And it seems like there is so much that is there that we don't sometimes understand, that we don't sometimes know how to navigate. And tonight on the show, we're starting out by going through some basics of diabetes, right? This is a primer, if you will. This is a show that we're going to talk about some of the basic things about diabetes and hopefully give you some pointers if you're diabetic or if you are someone around diabetics, people who have diabetes, that you can also help them. And so we're going to be building on this as we move through shows in the future, but we're starting out tonight, right? So get set, sit down, relax, get something to drink, if you will, get a piece of paper, get a pen, because we're about to do it, right? That's what we're doing tonight. Hey, this is Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E if you're new to me. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I encourage, and I empower you to take charge of your health, your life, avoid complications, go to the next level and create that life that you've always wanted. If you're new to me, go ahead and put new in the comments, new in the chat, because I'd love to give you a hand clap and some music to say, hey, welcome to our neighborhood and welcome to our group and welcome to the community. If you have a question that you want to ask as we go through the evening, go ahead and put that in the chat, in the comments. And we'll get to those. If you are here, I want you to claim your seat. Say, I'm here, y'all. I'm here, right? If you're here, if you know someone who needs to be listening to this, someone who needs to be watching this, go ahead and send this link out to them so that they also can be a part of what we are doing as we move through the show tonight. Part of what I'm doing as we move through the show together tonight. Guys, can you believe it? We're in July. That's right. We're in July. Moving through the month. We are on the 17th of the month, and I'm just so excited. We just finished our series called The Power of a Positive Mindset. Prior to that, we did The Art of Letting Go, and I'm just so excited that we got through those series. I learned so much. And as we look to the future, as we look to the end of the year that's coming up pretty soon, if you don't realize, yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I want you to make sure that you're doing all the things that you need to do to not just get your health in track, but also all of the other things we talked about, our mindset and our plans. You know, they say that the success of the year starts not at the January 1st, not on January 1st, but it starts as we move into that last quarter, okay? So we are now going to be picking up. I'm now going to be picking up and say, okay, what are the things that we need to get in place as we move towards the end of the year, not just to complete this year successfully, but also as we go into 2024. Can you believe it, y'all? 2024. That's why I say I encourage you, right? That's why I encourage you. I educate you. And I empower you to take charge of your health and your life. Not just health, but take charge of your life. Because as those things improve, we improve as well. All right, good. So once again, if you're out there, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Let people know that we are here. And let me pull over so that we can take a look at some of our channel stuff. Let's see. There we go. And that should be coming up there hopefully soon. Let's try that again. There we go. Yeah, that's it. All right. So this is the channel. This is the channel, and you'll see there that we have the first one, of course, is the show that we're doing tonight, Diabetes, a primer for the diabetic and those around them. We did a entire series about diabetes, right? So go back and watch that. I think there are 25 videos in that series. Of course, reinventing yourself, designing a new you. We did that one last summer. Excuse me, guys, last summer. And that is a perfect companion to the other two series that we've done, The Art of Letting Go and The Power of a Positive Mindset. And there that is, The Art of Letting Go, and then so many other videos that we've done on the channel. Go ahead and make sure that you are looking at those. We've had some amazing guests that have come through as well. All right. So having said all that, so if you've not already done so, go ahead and subscribe. Let us know that you're there. Let us know comments. If you see us out in the social space, make sure you go ahead and say hello to us. And you can find us, of course, on all the social media platforms. Dwayne Wood MD is how we are identified on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, and then, of course, here on the channel. All right. Okay. So let's hop over and let's talk, y'all, about diabetes. So diabetes, a primer for the diabetic and those around them. Okay. And the first thing I want to tell you is that I need you to breathe. Whew. Ooh. Take that big breath. Okay. Because as I mentioned, it seems like diabetes is all around us, right? It's in the news. Diabetes is on the rise. We'll see some information here in just a minute to tell us what's going on with our diabetics. But everywhere you turn, it seems like somebody is talking about diabetes. And if we take a quick snapshot of diabetes, there are about 37.3 million people in the United States, right? So that's in the US. That's with diabetes. If we take those folks, or if we take diabetes and we look around the world, there are almost 500 million, not million with an M, but billion with a B. Almost 500 million people on the planet that have diabetes. And the interesting thing about this is, if we come back here now looking at the United States, about 1 out of every 10 people, you said it again, 1 out of every 10 people have diabetes, and 1 in 5 don't know that they have it. So 10% of the population has diabetes. 1 out of 10, that's right, 10%. And 1 out of 5 of those people who have diabetes, that's 20%, don't know that they have diabetes. And so they're walking around with potential complications that are developing, and they don't know why. Right? So why are they having those things? What's going on? And if they're not careful, when it is finally diagnosed, when diabetes is finally diagnosed officially, then they can have some significant complications because they're walking around, they don't know. Okay, so that is a big number. Okay, so once again, 37.3 million people here in the United States, and then around the world, almost 500 million. So that's the big deal. That's why we talk about diabetes. That's why we talk about all the things that we do in terms of taking charge of your health, taking charge of your life, avoiding complications, right? So you hear me saying that word or those phrases, avoiding complications and going to the next level. So if we think about diabetes, right? People who have diabetes, they're 2 times more likely to die from complications of diabetes. They're 60% more likely to be diagnosed with heart disease, 2.5 times more likely to be hospitalized, 3.2 times more likely to be diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. So you see, the complication are not just limited to, I have diabetes, or I have sugar, or I have, as people say, I got the sugars. But those complications lend themselves to other things that go on in the body that are affected. And here, let me pause for a minute and let me say that often we think about people who have diabetes and we talk about what's called the triopathy, right? So retinopathy, problems with the eyes, nephropathy, problems with the kidneys, and neuropathy, problems with nerves in the feet, right? Those are the places. But because blood sugars are high, all the cells in your body are being affected by those high sugars. So even though we talk about those things, the triopathy, they are not the only things. They are not the only things that are being affected. They are the most commonly seen things, right? And those are the reasons where people show up. But hair loss, dry skin, poor wound healing, decreased immunity, decreased sperm count, irregular menstrual cycles, heart disease, gastroparesis, right? So all of those things, and that's just a short list. All of those things begin happening if we're not careful as we talk about diabetes and some of the complications. Okay, so the other term or the other thing that happens, right? So diabetes has a definition, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But pre-diabetes is when the blood sugars are higher than normal, but not quite where we call it diabetes. So once again, higher blood sugar than normal, but we haven't defined those people or diagnosed those people with diabetes as yet because they're borderline, if you will. And this number, 93 million in the United States. So if we take the 93 million who have prediabetes and combine that with the 37 million who have prediabetes, we have over 100,000 people that are at risk for complications. And people say, well, I'm pre-diabetic. Well, yes, pre-diabetic, but as you'll see here in a minute, the differences in terms of numbers, very small. The differences in terms of numbers, very, very small. Okay. So if we think about people who have diabetes and we lump them in with people who have other disease processes. Okay. So in the United States, when we talk about chronic disease, and so diabetes is a chronic disease, 6 out of every 10, that's 60% of the people in the United States have a chronic disease. So that's diabetes, high blood pressure, some kind of cancer, some lung disease, they've had a stroke. Okay. So 60% of people, 6 out of 10. Yeah. And 4 out of 10, 40% of those have have 2 or more. So 60% have one chronic disease. But if we look in that population again, that the 40% of those people have more than one. Yeah. Yep. So chronic disease is the leading cause of death and disability. And 4.1 trillion annually in costs attributable to chronic disease. So, we've told people that it is a lifestyle thing, right? Who gets it? Well, we've convinced people that it's okay if you eat too much, if you eat too many carbs, right? But I want to tell you that diabetes is no respecter of persons. It will affect families. It will affect people at different ages. It doesn't matter if you are single, married, in love, not in love, have children, don't have children. Right? Diabetes is not a respecter of persons. And even though we evaluate, right? We look at all the numbers and we're crunching them, and we've been doing research for a long time. We still don't quite have all the data as to why diabetes happens. Now we have some pretty solid information, but if you are out there and you've been listening, right, you hear people talk about all kinds of different things that are going. This causes diabetes and that causes diabetes. And if you stop this, and if you do that, and if you drink this, and if you don't eat that, then you can prevent diabetes, or you can cure it, or you can reverse it. Diabetes is even affecting our children. And while we talk about the triopathy and we talk about those complications, there are some things that go on in diabetes that we don't spend a lot of time talking about. And these are the quality of life issues that we see. The quality of life issues. So things like social isolation and loneliness, Because when we talk about chronic diseases, people who have diabetes, they may have some complications. They may have some neuropathy, right? So that's poor nerves. And so their balance is off. And so they don't drive as well. So they begin to pull in and they begin to stay in longer, stay by themselves. Right? Other disabilities that go along with diabetes. How about fatigue and pain, discomfort, feeling of distress, anger, hopelessness, frustration? So all these things are components of quality of life. And because of chronic illness and, of course, diabetes, that makes it difficult. But those are some of the issues, some of the things that we don't talk much about. Yeah. All right. So obesity. We said obesity is a big player, right? Approximately 2 billion adults and children are overweight or obese. By 2030, it's estimated that 30% of the planet, 30% of the planet, right? Everybody on the planet is going to be overweight. Most of the world's population right now live where being overweight or obese kills more people than being underweight. 39 million children under the age of 5 were overweight or obese in 2020. All right, just some numbers. And over 340 million children or adolescents were overweight, obese in 2016. All right? So going back and looking at numbers. So these are numbers. We think that diabetes is partially genetic and partially lifestyle. And so there are two main types of diabetes that we'll talk about, type 1 diabetes and type 2. There's also gestational diabetes. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune process, we believe. An autoimmune process. So there's a genetic predisposition, so that's family history. And then people get an infection. That infection causes damage to the pancreatic cells, and the pancreatic cells decrease their ability, or it decreases the pancreatic cells' ability to make insulin. And so we have insulin deficiency, and that leads to type 1 diabetes. So type 1 diabetes is a deficiency of insulin. Essentially, the body doesn't make any because the cells in the pancreas have been destroyed, and their function, the function of those cells that release insulin decreases. Now, there are other cells in the pancreas that make other things, but specifically here we're talking about insulin. So it's an insulin deficiency, not a deficiency in the insulin function. Okay, so let me make that clear. So they don't make insulin, so they are insulin requiring. So far we have not been able to reverse type 1 diabetes. Now, there are lots of studies that are being done. There's a lot of research that's being done. You know, we're trying, we're working, but we have not been able to reverse type 1 diabetes. We have not been able to fix type 1 diabetes. What I mean by that is when someone is diagnosed, right? If we catch them early, sometimes people say we can fix them. Well, we don't know how to stop the destruction of pancreatic cells once this process starts. And while we have some ideas of the culprit, and that's that viral infection that I talked about. So there's genetic part, then there's environmental. We think that the viral infection is Coxsackie. Coxsackie is a virus that basically a cold virus, an enterovirus. But we don't have a complete picture. So people say, well, hey, if we can stop people from getting a Coxsackie infection, then maybe we can stop type 1 diabetes, possibly. But we're not there yet. So that's type 1 diabetes. And type 1 diabetes fits into the autoimmune family. And that's why if we look at other things in the autoimmune disease process, things like lupus, psoriasis, thyroid disease, Crohn's disease, all of those diseases fit into this autoimmune idea. Okay, so basically the body is fighting against itself for some reason, and it causes destruction. And that destruction, in the case of diabetes, type 1 diabetes, is that the cells that produce insulin get destroyed. Right? If that makes sense, say yeah. Say yes. When we talk about type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, type 2 diabetes, there's still a genetic component, this family history. And then there's an environmental component, that is lifestyle. So the family gives you the genetics. So mom has diabetes, dad has diabetes, and so forth. And there is a genetic component because it's familial. But then the environment on top of that adds to the insult. So remember, families tend, and I'm going to use this because this is the prevailing theory, that it is the fact that we eat a certain way, we put on weight, and because we put on weight, then we have problems with insulin. We'll come to the term that we use here in just a sec. So the family gives you the genetics, and then the way our families eat, right? Because we all tend to eat together, we all tend to eat the same way. And so the process gets exacerbated because the environment adds to it. So a second insult, if you will, the two-hit theory, as we say in medicine. And because of that, the body tries to make more and more and more and more insulin. And when it can't, then we have either abnormal secretion, right? Or the insulin that's made is ineffective. And this process is what we term insulin resistant. So if you've heard that phrase, insulin resistant, insulin resistance, right? That's what that means. That the insulin that we're making is not able to do the job that we need. So notice that in this case, these patients have insulin. In fact, sometimes if you check the amount of insulin that someone who has type 2 diabetes, right, the amount of insulin they make, and you compare that with the amount of insulin that a normal non-diabetic person has, then the person who has insulin resistance and or diabetes is actually making more. Because as the blood sugars rise, the body produces more and more insulin to try to keep the blood sugars in check or under control. And so when the body can't make any more, for example, you need, I'm pick this random number. Say you need 25 units of insulin per day, and your body can only make 24. Then the blood sugars rise, and that then is diabetes. So by the time someone is diagnosed, they have been, the pancreas has been kind of smoldering, right? It's been trying, it's been pumping out more, it's been going. It's kind of like that old car that gives, its last before it counts out. And in terms of type 2 diabetes, right, once again, we believe that the insult is based on dietary and weight changes. So, a question. Which came first, the chicken or egg, right? So in type 1, we know that there is the insult that happens. We know that there is this viral infection, and the viral infection causes a problem. The insulin, the ability of the insulin or the body to make insulin goes away. A body to make insulin goes away, and so that causes the issue. But in type 2 diabetes, what came first? Was it the fact that a patient put on weight, and then that causes the issue? Or was there some underlying problem, and then that caused the insulin and the weight gain and so forth? And there are some folks right now having discussions about that, right? We won't get into all of that Right. Now, if you're interested in that, we can come back and we can do a show about it. But we won't get into that all right now. Let me click something over here real quick, guys. There we go. All right. Okay, so which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? And so we're not going to try to figure that out. Suffice it to say, for all of those who are having conversations on either side of this issue, the goal is the same, right? The goal is the same. It is, how do we improve diabetes? And so, sometimes it seems like there's a war, and the war really comes down on two sides. It's like, who is the bad guy? Is it the carbs that we eat, or is it the fat that we eat? The carbs or fat? Who is the bad guy? And I would say that it's probably a combination. It's a combination of things. So if we look at some of the maps that the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, have put out over the years, right? And this is one that traces weight, right? So our BMI, our weight as it reflects or is measured by BMI, basic metabolic index, versus diabetes. Okay, so you'll see that coming up here in a minute. And when we look at that, starting in 1994, the lighter numbers or lighter colors mean less weight or lower weight, and the darker colors means more weight. That's on top. And then on the bottom, the lighter colors mean less diabetes, and the darker colors mean more. And you'll see over the course of time, as we've tracked it, as we've gotten bigger, as reflected by the BMI. So as our BMIs have gotten higher and higher and higher, so have the rates of diabetes. Yeah. So as we've gotten bigger as a country, the amount of diabetes that we have diagnosed, or the prevalence, has gone up. So there is a direct correlation with the two. And so, you're right. Once again, people are saying, okay, it's the fact that I'm eating hamburgers and fries. Or is the fact that I'm eating too many carbohydrates. So on the screen, can you spot the carbohydrate? All right, which one is a carbohydrate? So we got potatoes, we got bread, we got rice, pasta, vegetables, a whole bunch of vegetables, right? We got a fruit salad. And we've got broccoli. We've got a cucumber. So which is the carb? Which is the carb? The truth is that they're all carbohydrates. And they all will raise your blood sugar. All carbohydrates, they all will raise your blood sugar. So why do we eat the way we eat? Now, the reason I ask that is, we're told that the food that we eat causes the problems in our health, right? And right now we may be talking about diabetes, but we can have the same discussion about high blood pressure, right? The food we eat. We can have the same discussion about high cholesterol or heart disease or the incidence of strokes or a numerous amounts of things. So if the food is what's causing it, then why do we eat the way we eat? And there are several reasons that we can come up with. And I did a show back when we did our series about diabetes, and we talked a little bit more in depth about this. But there are policies that are out there in terms of the food pyramids, right? And the plate now. And I think, do I have a plate? Hold on a second. There you go. All right. So I have a little plate here. I'm going to take off the top of this. And so I don't have this all labeled, but here. Okay. So we've talked about, hey, how do we go ahead and fix a plate? Right? We tell people, hey, you've got to eat this many carbs or this much fat. We got to eat this much fruits and vegetables. Okay. So there are policies that are out there that tell us, hey, you got to have this much protein and so forth. And sometimes the policies are affected not necessarily by, and let me be cautious as I say this. So the policies may not all the time reflect what is in the best interest of the body. See how I kind of get around that one, right? So there are policies that are out there. Okay. Then there's this idea of access. Well, if I live in an area where the only thing, well, I shouldn't say the only thing, the most prevalent thing that I can eat are the things that may not be the best for my body, then that becomes an issue. If I'm an older person, if I don't have a car, or if the store is far away, then the access becomes an issue. And then advertising and design. Advertising and design. So when people are advertising, when they're advertising food, you know what the goal is for the food? That's right, is to get you to eat it and get you to buy more. So we want to make it look good. We want to make you think that if you don't get it, so this whole idea of the fear of missing out, right? So if I don't get that thing, then I'm missing out on the value of it. Or how about this? Everybody's doing it. That's why you see on the commercials, right? Everybody around is eating that thing. And you feel, well, man, if everybody's eating it, I got to get it too. And how about this one? If you eat it, and they do this not just for food, for everything else. If you eat it, then you're better, right? So if you eat that piece of chocolate, or if you eat that hamburger, or if you eat that brand of rice, or if you eat that brand of this, or if you eat this particular food, then you're a better person for it, right? So the fear of missing out, I'm better if I eat it, and then everybody's doing it. And then how about hormones, right? Hormones will cause us to eat a certain way. This is why it's so important for us to deal with the types of hormones. And here I'm talking about stress hormones, right? But if you are a female, when you are going through your cycle, when you are pregnant, right? You guys know the prototypic the joke about pregnant women, right? So they have all these cravings. Why do you think they have cravings? Do you think they just wake up one day and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to eat, I don't know. And I'm not going to say something because some people just eat that normally. I'm not going to make it. Right? So yeah. So it's a hormonal thing. The hormones are making you eat this certain way. And then because of taste, right? It tastes good. Those same people who are advertising, right? They want you to say, oh, let me get some more of that stuff. So they make it taste good. They put the right amount of sugar, the right amount of salt, the right amount of fat. They make the texture feel just right. So that when you take one, what's the commercial? You can't just eat one. I always ask that question, right? So yeah. So the goal is to get you to eat more of it. And so the taste is a big part of it. So why do we eat the way we eat? Well, that's it right there. And I mean, there are other reasons, but those are big ones. And we don't spend enough time talking about that. We convince people that all of it is their fault. Oh, if you were stronger, if you were more moral, if you had better self-control, then you wouldn't eat the way you eat. Well, guess what? Everything around us is telling us to eat away. And you're telling me to eat the opposite. Which one do you think I'm going to do? Right? We go for the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance. So there's this concept that I want to give, and it's this idea of metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome. But before I do that, let me do some shout outs. And I see some folks out here. So Jeff, hey man, thank you for coming through. So Jeff is answering the question, I think, which of the things are carbohydrates? And he said all of them. And you were so right. right? All of them are carbs. So guys, here is a definition of a carbohydrate. You ready? So the definition of a carbohydrate is anything that grew out of the ground, or anything that's made from something that was grown out of the ground. That is a carbohydrate. So if it's a plant, a root, a vegetable, a fruit, if it came out of the ground, or it was made from something that came out of the ground, then it is a carbohydrate. So bread is a carbohydrate because it comes from wheat. And I know there are other types of bread. You can make rice bread and so forth. Whatever it is a carb because it came from something that grew out of the ground. Pasta is a carbohydrate because it grew from something that came out of the ground. And let me change the phrasing of that a little bit. Pasta contains carbohydrates. Bread contains carbohydrates. Fruit contains carbohydrate. And the reason I changed that is this is why we tell people that it's better to eat vegetables and fruits than it is to eat other things, because coupled with the fruit or the vegetable, there is the not just the sugar that's in there, right, or the carbohydrate that turns into sugar, but there are other nutrients. There's water, there's fiber, okay? So that's why I changed my phraseology there a minute ago. Instead of saying that it is a carb, let me say it contains more carbs. So when you compare a piece of bread to a piece of fruit, they both contain carbohydrates because they both come from the ground. They were grown. But when you look at the nutrients, and I'm talking about natural nutrients, not things that we've added. Because when we process, for instance, wheat to make bread, we add stuff to it, right? To make it more nutritional. But if we look at just the raw materials, there are some things that come from fruits and vegetables that don't necessarily come from the wheat. So just an idea there. I was doing shout outs. So Jeff, yeah. And Cheryl said, not enough sleep will make me hungry. That is so true. I got to get rid of those. I don't have. Do I have any ice cream in there? Yeah. If I have ice cream, then when I'm tired, I do eat the carbs. Okay. So Jeff says Lay's potato chips. Is that the one that says you can't just eat one? Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Jeff. Thanks for looking that up for us or letting us know. All right. So metabolic syndrome. So what is this metabolic syndrome that we talk about? Right. So we've talked about the reason we eat the way we do. So metabolic syndrome is a constellation of symptoms, physical things that we find, physical exam findings, and labs. Okay. So metabolic syndrome, this idea of metabolic syndrome, because it predisposes you to heart disease and high blood pressure and diabetes and so forth, right? So increased blood pressure, so high blood pressure, high blood sugars, excess body fat, and abnormal cholesterol, right? So those are some of the components of metabolic syndrome. And so when people are being evaluated, or say, hey, you have 2 of these, 3 of these, 4 of those, if you get another one, then you will have metabolic syndrome. But what we fail to tell people that it is a spectrum. So people say, oh, I only have 2. Well, yes, that's good. But you do have 2, or I only have 1. Yes, that's good, but you do have 1. So the idea is not that, oh, I only have 1, so I'm good. It is not necessarily to kind of help to make you think, okay, I don't have to do anything. It's we have these things that we're looking at, and if we're not careful, it can cause other issues for us. And you guys remember, you may or may not remember this idea of body type, right? Body shape. And these are the apple-shaped people, where they're large in the central part of their body, or the pear-shaped people that are larger in the hips and lower parts of the body. And people who are apple-shaped are considered to be at higher risk because they have that central obesity, central fat. And let me tell you why that is so important. Because the fat that is around the midsection, the fat that's around the midsection is not only there, right? We see part of it, but around the midsection, that's where a lot of the organs are. So around your liver and around your pancreas, right? And your GI tract. And, if it goes farther back, can cover the kidneys. So a lot of those vital structures are now covered or encased in fat. That's why that central obesity, that central fat, that apple-shaped person is at high risk. Right? The pear-shaped person, and once again, it's a degree. So people say, "Oh, I'm pear-shaped, so I'm good." Well, right, you're lower risk, but you can still have issues as well. Okay, so that's the whole idea behind this metabolic syndrome. Those are the characteristics, and then you can look at the shape and say, hey, we need to work on this area because it's causing us some issue. Well, so when we think about food, right, going back to food, what does food do? The ultimate purpose of food is for energy. Ultimate purpose of food is for energy. It's kind of like putting gas in your car. Right, you got that 87, 89, 93 octane that you can put in. The same thing for food. You can put in proteins, carbs, and fats. And the ultimate goal for the digestion, right, once it's digested, is that we get energy from it. Because it gets broken down into lots of different things. Amino acids, free fatty acids, and glycerol, and then glucose. That part you don't need to know, but it's being broken down. So when you eat that, and I'm going to choose one, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily the culprit, but when you eat that hamburger, right, it has some carbs in it, the bread, it has protein, the meat, and it has fat, well, the meat, right? And of course, if you put lettuce and cheese and all that other stuff, you get more protein, more fat, more carbs. And ultimately, when we eat the food is digested, is broken down into its components, and then it has to get into the cell. And we can imagine the cell as kind of like a doorway. And the doorway has to be opened. And the thing that opens the doorway is that insulin that we talked about before. So for people who have type 1 diabetes, they don't have any key to open the door. So the door is closed. And the only way that they can open it to get the energy that's required for their body to function is that the key has to be given to them. And that's why we give insulin. That's why we give insulin for type 1 diabetics. When there is not enough insulin, then the blood sugars go up. And in the case of all of them, type 1, type 2, if we have excess energy, right? So the door is closed or we've eaten too much. Well, the body still has to process that energy that you gave it, that burger, that carb, that donut, that whatever. Even if you eat fruits, if you eat too many fruits, the sugar that comes from the fruit has to go somewhere. And so what does the body do with that? The body takes it, processes it, breaks it down, it goes through the door, and then it goes out into the rest of the body. And so we can have, and these triglycerides are a storage form of fat. Those triglycerides go and they can clog the liver, they can clog the pancreas, they build more fat cells. I shouldn't say build, they fill more fat cells, and they can go into the muscles. So you can have fatty deposition in the muscles. Now, here's an interesting one, right? Somebody asked me this, and I was talking, the reason you heard me change my thought there, or change what I said there a minute. I said that they make more fat cells. What we've learned is that the number of fat cells that you are born with are the same number of fat cells that you have right now. And some of you are like, well, no. Sometimes I say that. I say, wait a minute. They're telling me I don't have any more fat cells, but I think I got some more. But no, what happens is we don't get more fat cells, but the cells that we have, we push more stuff into it. It's like a balloon, right? And it expands. The more stuff you put in, the bigger it gets. Which is why if we take stuff out of the cells, then those cells shrink. Right? So the number of fat cells, number of adipocytes, right? So fat cells, that's the medical term for it. The number of adipocytes or fat cells that you have right now are the same number that you had when you were born. They're not more or less, they're just filled to a different degree. So all of this stuff goes together, right? So the entire body. I love this graphic that's on the screen, right? And you'll see this if you watch me, if you listen to me, you'll probably see me put this up like all the time for every disease process, probably. Even when I'm talking about mental health and talking about personal growth and talking about goal setting. Because everything gets connected, and we forget that. And when we forget it, it causes other issues, right? So everything is connected. And excess fat that we talk about can cause other things, right? So polycystic ovarian syndrome, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver, stroke. And if we have those things, then those lead to other issues: fatigue, disability, bad balance. Right? So if you have a stroke and you have residual, now either thought process is affected, or so you have some mentation limitation, you have some physical limitation, you can't carry things, you can't walk as well, you can't drive as well. Right? So it all comes together. So what makes the person at risk for prediabetes and type 2 diabetes? So if you have prediabetes, right? You have prediabetes, right? If you're overweight, then that increases your risk. If you're 45 years or older here in the United States, yes, that increases your risk. If you've ever had gestational diabetes, and that's one of the diabetes that we did not talk about. So this is diabetes that occurs when a patient is pregnant. Their body becomes insulin resistant. When we mentioned that phrase when we talked about type 2 diabetes. So the hormones in their body makes them insulin resistant. So if someone has had gestational diabetes, then they're at higher risk for diabetes, frank diabetes, certainly at risk for prediabetes. And if you go back on our channel, we did a show on polycystic ovarian syndrome. If someone is physically inactive, then they're at increased risk. If they have a parent, a brother, a sister with type 2 diabetes, remember we talk about the genetics, then they are at risk for prediabetes and diabetes. If you've not had gestational diabetes, but you've given birth to a large baby with a weight of 9 pounds or more, then you're at risk. And if you were the baby that was large, then you're at increased risk. If you're African American, if you're Hispanic, Latin American, Native American, then you're at increased risk. And if you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, so basically fat around the liver, we talked about the apple core shaped person, right? That's why that is so important, because it puts you at risk for other things. So all those things will happen. All right, I see. Let's see. Vivian Barnes said, "Hey, very good info. Thank you, Vivian, for coming through. Appreciate it." Right. So let's pivot a little bit. And so we've been talking about diabetes, but let's throw some other things in there, right? Because once again, if you remember my graphic, everything is connected. So as we're talking about diabetes, these are the risk factors. But what are the risk factors for, let's pick one. Let's pick heart disease. What are the risk factors for heart disease? Well, if you go through the list, right, the risk factors for heart disease: high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, high cholesterol, and then smoking, lack of exercise. Remember we talked about the inactivity, lack of exercise, and an unhealthy diet. So all of those things together puts you at risk for heart disease. And they are similar lists. It's a similar list for people who are at risk for prediabetes. So why is this so important? Why is it so important? Because when we think about controlling blood sugars, studies have shown that if we can keep the A1C reduced, then we can decrease some of the complications. Here we talked about the fact that there are lots of different things that happen in the body, but the three most common have to do with nerves, eyes, and kidneys. So we can decrease the complications of those things by 50%, 56% or better. Right? So nerve damage by 60%, eye damage by 76%, and kidney damage by 56%. This is for our type 1. If we talk about our type 2 diabetes, right, we can decrease heart attacks by 16%, eye damage by 21%, kidney damage by 34%. So still amazing. And when we talk about diabetes, I said I'd mention about the diagnosis. What does it mean to be diabetic, to be pre-diabetic, and so forth? When we think about diabetes, right? So a normal person has an A1C. So a hemoglobin A1C. Let's talk about that for a minute. So when you are, well, let me use this example. Like my son is in school. Well, he's not in school now, but during the year, he's in school. And we get those report cards. Yeah. And the report card, if you remember when you were in school, the report card is a representation of what you have been doing for that quarter or semester, whatever the length of time is. So you took 5 tests, you had homework, you had a project in school, and they add all of that up and they come up with an average, and the average is what gives you your grade in the class. And usually, actually, it's about 3 months, right? So let's see, August, September, October, November. Well, maybe more. whatever your school does. Well, the hemoglobin A1C is a 90-day, so 3-month representation of what your blood sugars have been for that last 90 days. So it's basically the report card of what your blood sugars have done. So if your blood sugars were good, and I'm not going to define what the word good is. If your blood sugars were good, when you get your report card, the A1C, then you get a good A1C. So basically it's a report card. So when we look at A1Cs, people who have A1Cs that are 5.6 or lower, they're considered to have a normal range A1C. 5.6 or lower. Now, I'm not going to go, people say, hey, my A1C is 4. Is that bad? Or 3? Is that? So if you're below 5.6, then you're good. Okay? If you're 5.7 to 6.4, then you are pre-diabetic. And so once again, this is where we say that, hey, a person who has pre-diabetes, their A1C, their blood sugars are higher than normal, as you heard, but they're not quite to the level of what we call diabetic. So 5.6 to 6.4, pre-diabetes. And if you are 6.5 or higher, then you're considered to be diabetic. Now, as I mentioned before, like keep those numbers in mind. So if you are 6.4, you're pre-diabetic. And if you're 6.5, you're diabetic. Okay? Does that make sense so far? That's based on the discussion that we just had. Well, do you think that the complications that comes if you're 6.4 are that much less than if you are 6.5? And the answer is probably not. So when someone say, hey, I'm pre-diabetic, I'm 6.5, I'm good. Not really. And that is the problem with these definitions. That it gives us a false sense of security. That, hey, I'm 6.4, so I'm good. I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing. Right? And so people say, hey, my doctor told me that I'm borderline. yeah, you're borderline, but still we want to do things that help. Okay, so those are the definitions of normal, prediabetes, and diabetes. So 6.5 or higher, you're considered to be a person who has diabetes. So what do we do? Let's run over that, right? We're talking about all this stuff. So treatment options. Treatment options include lifestyle modification, non-prescription treatment, and then prescription medication. And if you go back and look at our series about managing diabetes, everything you need to know about diabetes, we did an extensive discussion on each of these. We're going to do a quick go through here in just a minute, but that is what we want to do. So lifestyle modification, non-prescription medication, and prescription medication. Let's jump to the type 1s. Type 1s need prescription medication because they have a deficiency of insulin. So they have to have insulin on board. Let me just say that, right? We're working to try to see how we can get around that, not get around, but how to fix it. How do we prolong the beta cell function? How do we reverse the beta cell function? How do we stop the infection that causes the beta cell destruction? We're not there yet. So when we talk about lifestyle modification, what does that mean? What does lifestyle modification mean? It means doing all the things that are necessary to maintain good glycemic, remember that word glycemic, that means blood sugar, good glycemic control. So blood sugar sugar in the blood, right? So good glucose in the blood control, good glycemic control. And it includes diet, activity, definitely. Watching what we put in, burning up the stuff that we put in, getting enough sleep, managing our stress, taking care of depression, pain, and inflammation. And we're not talking about the stress hormones right here, but this is where the stress hormones come in. Other than diet and activity, when we have stress in our lives, then our blood sugars are higher. When we have stress in our lives, blood sugars are higher. And we have stress. And when we talk about the fact that the blood sugars, or not blood sugar, the food that we eat has a specific purpose, right? The food that we eat, the purpose of food, y'all. Let me go. What's the purpose of the purpose of food is for energy. Purpose for food is energy. But look at this. We eat food not just for energy. We eat food when we celebrate, right? So birthdays, weddings, holidays, other special occasions. We just talked about 4th of July a couple weeks ago. To show affection, we cook or we go to dinner, right? Hey, you got that special person, you take them on a special date. What do you eat? What do? You eat. We eat for comfort, right? There's nothing like a warm bowl of soup, well, at least for me, or a home-cooked meal. We eat to bond. Right? So we share an experience. You get a friend, say, hey, let's go out for coffee. Let's go out and get some cookies. Let's go out and get a muffin. We eat to relax, right? That leisurely lunch with family and friends, right? And you see, the wind with commercials, the wind is blowing, the sun is shining, got people around a table, they're around a grill. We eat to stay awake. Right? Sometimes I'm working in here and I'm chomping. I'm not hungry. I'm just trying to stay awake. We eat to soothe ourselves, soothe our emotion when we're mad, when we're sad, when we're happy, when we're stressed, when we're anxious, when we're depressed, all of those things. And of course, when we are bored. It's food. And then, of course, our non-medication related treatments. And those come in the form of natural things, right? Things like cinnamon, chromium, bitter melon, cannabidiol, curcumin, which is turmeric. So all those things have been shown to help improve blood sugars. Or people use them. Let me say it that way. People use them. And there are studies out there you can go and find. But what do we want to do? The conclusion is we want to make sure that we are managing not the conclusion, but we want to make sure that we're managing everything, that we're managing our A1C. So managing our blood sugars. We want to manage our blood pressure, manage our cholesterol, and then don't smoke. So I threw that one in there. All right. So the ABCs of managing diabetes, managing heart disease, right? So watch your A1C, control your blood sugar, watch your cholesterol, and don't smoke, because smoking makes everything worse. Smoking makes everything worse. Let's see. Cheryl she says, what does Europe have? So why does Europe have lower numbers than the USA's glucose levels? Okay. I think I know what you're saying. Yeah. So if you look at countries outside of the United States, their numbers are they're measured differently. Right. So we use milligrams per deciliter. So if you're looking at a country outside of the United States, you may see their blood sugar. They'll say their blood sugar is, let me find a good one. They might say their blood sugar is 5. Yeah. Okay. Or the blood sugar is 6 or 7 or 8 and 9 or 10. And then you look at ours, it's like, wait a minute, our blood sugars are like 100, 200, 300. Well, what you have to do to convert from theirs to ours, you have to multiply their number by 20. So if their blood sugar is 5 times 20 is 100. So then if you look at ours, so that's how you would convert. I think that's what you're asking, Cheryl. If not, just correct me. But yeah, you have to multiply theirs by 20. Okay, and that gives you an approximation, right, of blood sugars. So cool. Thank you. Great question. All right. So that's what we want to do. Okay. Blood sugars, control it. ABCs. The ABCs. A1C. B, blood pressure. C, cholesterol. And then S, ABCs, don't smoke. Don't smoke. All right. So this is a great place, guys, for us to do our thought of the day. So let's hop over and let's do that real quick. All right. So today's thought of the day is centered on moving past what's holding us back. We all experience times in our lives when we feel stuck, boxed into a corner with seemingly no way out. But remember, it's not about waiting until the storm passes. It's about learning to navigate through it. So it's not about waiting till the storm passes or that your situation gets better, but it's about how do I learn to navigate through it. So number one, recognize the situation. The first step to getting unstuck is to recognize that you're in a tough spot. Acknowledge that feelings of discomfort and uncertainty are there. Don't push them away. Understand that our current situation always allows us to see what's not working, right? Because sometimes we get pigeonholed, right? We're like, oh man, this is going on. Nothing's working. But yeah, because we're stuck in that space. What we need to do is we pivot. It's okay to feel stuck. It happens. It's a sign that change is needed. And in fact, if you don't get stuck, that means you're not doing enough stuff. Right? Because if you are doing things, you will become stuck. So first acknowledge or first identify, recognize the situation. Number two, embrace your courage. Embrace the fact that you took a chance. We all have courage within us. It's inherent to face challenges head on. It might seem intimidating at first, but remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else is more important than fear. So it's not the absence of fear. It's that I'm doing this thing anyway, even though I'm afraid. I'm going to step out because I have courage. Your dreams, your aspiration, your growth, these are all worth fighting for. And then unleash your potential. We often limit ourselves with our own thoughts, beliefs. Remember, you're within your right. You're within your right to say, hey, this didn't work, so I'm going to take a moment. But within you right now, everything you need to deal with that, whatever it is in you. All you've got to do is step out. You may need to go and find somebody to teach you something. Find a mentor, find a counselor, find a coach, find a certification, find whatever. So those are just things that are assisting you. But in you right now, there is courage. Sometimes the only thing standing in our way is our own self-doubt. Believe in your abilities and let the world see what you are capable of. So, what do you think? Getting unstuck is about recognizing the situation, embracing your courage, and unleashing your potential. It's not about waiting until the winds calm down, but learning to use them to your advantage. Let the winds of change carry you to the horizon. And so now I urge you to take a moment today. Think about where you are. Think about where you're stuck. Think about where you are in your life. What steps can I take to embrace the courage and unleash the potential within me? I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, you are stronger than your challenges, and your capacity for growth is limitless when you dare to navigate the storm. And that is our thought for today. All right. So, Cheryl, I see a question from you. Let's see. Cheryl says, I heard that at 100 you are diabetic, and we are above 100 before we consider someone a diabetic, and something like that. Okay. So that's a good question, Cheryl. So, and I showed you the A1C, right? The A1C is the thing that we went through, the one that was, 5.6 or lower, you're normal, 5.7, to 6.4, then you are pre-diabetic, and then 6.5 or higher. If we take that same, if we take those same diabetics, and let me see if I can pop this up here real quick. Maybe I can, let's see, I got to pull up. Because I'm gonna actually draw, if I can find something to draw with. How about this guy? Yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay. Blankly. Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can use this. Nope. All right, guys. Well, let me just describe it for you, Cheryl. So if a person has, so a normal blood sugar, right? Normal blood sugar is 99 or lower. So 99 or lower is considered normal blood sugar. Right, and there's a range below that. If you're lower than a certain number, you're considered hypoglycemic or low blood sugar. But lower than 99 is considered normal. A pre-diabetic is considered to be 100 to 125. So 100 to 125 pre-diabetic, and then a person who is 126 or higher is considered to be diabetic. Okay, so that's how that works. And I was trying to find a way to write that and show it to you, but anyway, that's how that would work. Okay, does that make sense? So lower than 99 or lower is considered to be diabetic, normal. 100 to 125 pre-diabetic, and then 126 or higher is considered diabetic. Okay. She said these numbers between US and Europe. Yeah, so like I said, that conversion is what you would do to convert from from their blood sugar number to ours. So if you look at theirs, you'll see lower numbers. Not because their blood sugars, quote unquote, are lower, is they use a different range, and to convert it, you have to do what we talked about earlier. Okay. Yeah. All right. So good, guys. Yeah, I'm excited that you were here. Once again, if you've not already done so, go ahead and look at our YouTube channel, and lots of stuff on there. This show will be on there soon. Well, it's on there now, so you'll see it there. There is our channel. Lots of things that you can look at. Okay. Also, if you've not already done so, go ahead and head over to this one. Dwayne Wood MD. So Dwayne Wood MD, that is our that's our website. And so you can go through there. You'll see our blog. Lots of good stuff there on the blog, right? And at the bottom of, let me pull this up real quick. So at the bottom of our blog, so the blogs have to do with lots of different things, right? We talk about mindset and goal setting. And this one is the mind-body connection and insight into personal growth, right? How does the mind affect our health? That's the one that we did on Friday. But at the bottom of lots of these, and we started this probably about 2-3 months ago, at the bottom we have what we call the toolbox. And the toolbox is an exercise that I've developed for that particular blog post that helps walk you through how to begin using the stuff you learned in the blog. So the goal for the blog is not just to read it and be done, but it's how do I apply this to my life? And those you'll see there. And if you go back up, you can go over to the list, right? So at the top, you'll see the list, and you click on Toolbox, then it will show you all of the posts that have a toolbox attached to it, right? So the goal is to have all of them. So I've got to go back and do those exercises for some of the other blogs that I've done. Like I said, I've started doing this probably about 2-3 months ago, but I want to do it for everything. So I'm going to go back and add to those so that you can see those. Then of course our podcast, right? So the podcast, what we do is we repurpose, we take the stuff that we've done here, and we edit it and we put it together on our blog, on our podcast. And yay, guys, so I didn't advertise this, but we have had at least 1,000 when I got my little thing. It was 1,000 podcasts were downloaded. 1,000 people went in and downloaded our podcast. So yeah, thank you for all those who do that. Thank you for your encouragement. Of course, videos, right, that are listed there. And then if you're interested in coaching, if you're interested in working with me, if you're interested in getting unstuck, if you're interested in moving from where you are, whatever that is, right? If you've been disappointed in your ability to get your blood sugars under control, if you've had complications, if you've had a stroke, if you've had a heart attack, if you have had problems with numbness, tingling, burning, if you've had an amputation, if you are sitting and you are limited because of your disease process, I would love to work with you. And that's what our coaching is about, right? If you are having issues with, I feel like something is wrong, but I know I can't stay here, but I don't know what to do, then I would love to come alongside and help you navigate those storms. And we talked about that in the thought of today, right? How do I begin taking that courage that's in me that you just talked about, Dr. Wood? How do I begin taking that and changing my life? Because I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm irritable, I feel like life is just passing me by. If you want help with that, go ahead to our website, and we'd love to be part of that. All right. Well, good guys. Yes. Thank you for being here. Please come back next week. Share this video with your family, with your friends. Let them know that we're here. We appreciate those of you who came through. Cheryl, Jeff, and Vivian, thank you for coming through and hanging out with us and commenting. And we will see you next week at our next video. This is our next episode. This is Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health, your life, avoid complications, go to the next level, and create the life you've always wanted. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.